Welcome to Season 2 of the Play Their Way podcast, where we talk about all things in Child First coaching. I'm your host, Laura Jane Jones, and today's guest is Swans FC Chairman, Eamonn Newell. Eamonn, welcome to the pod, and thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Eamonn Newell is the chairman of Twickenham Swans Football Club, but this club has a slightly unorthodox story, where many junior sections follow their adult teams in formation. Swans FC started initially with the Signets. It was your junior section that came first, Eamonn. So tell us about the club's humble beginnings before we get on to where you are today.
Yes, thank you. So it all started in 2015. I have two daughters. My youngest daughter arrived home from school one day and she was a bit crestfallen that she hadn't been selected for the school football team. And that was a bit of a revelation for me because she had expressed no interest ever in playing football. So I kind of sensed why she might not be selected. So I kind of brought her down to the local park and we had a little bit of a kick about it. And to no one's surprise, she couldn't kick a ball. But she was interested, and that was a major kind of breakthrough. And I just thought, yeah, that's great. She's expressing an interest in football. And being in an all-female household, I was, I guess, selfishly thinking I may have a potential football buddy in the house. So I called some of the local clubs and there was conversations about trials and, bring it down and we'll have a look. And I was thinking, you've got a 10-year-old girl that hasn't been selected for the school team for probably very understandable reasons. And her introduction into football would be maybe a bunch of middle-aged men looking at her to see whether she's good enough for their club. And I just thought that doesn't feel right. So I spoke to her about it and asked, did she have friends that maybe felt the same way, that they too were being excluded from the school team, or they were in the school team, or they wanted to play a bit more. And that led to a training session in May 2015 with jumpers for goalposts, about 8 girls, myself, 2 other dads in the local area, not really having a clue what we were doing, but we were just kind of proud that we had built the start of something. We had a group of girls that wanted to play football and it was great fun. And the following week, they all came back and they brought some more of their friends. So that was, I think we started with 8 and we're going through the registration process for next season, and I think at the moment we're at 250 or 260. So it's kind of taken off.
Jumpers for goalposts still, or
we've moved on. We have got goalposts. We've got proper roll-on goals with nets even. So yeah, it's been a journey, but it's been great fun.
I know that you've got roll-on nets and goalposts because I've got a friend whose daughter actually plays in goal for one of the Signets sides, and I know how appreciative they are as a family and how lucky they feel to have this in their locale. But when you were in this position 9 years ago with your girls, were you surprised by the lack of provision for girls in this space?
Yes and no. I mean, I wasn't aware that there was a lack of provision because it initially wasn't something that I ever thought I'd need to tap into. But when there was an expression of interest and I started making some inquiries, I was really surprised because this was 2015 and girls football has obviously taken off hugely since the Euros and before that. But even at that time in 2015, it still felt relatively niche. I mean, you're tripping over yourself in our local area for boys football clubs, but when it came to girls, there was very little. So I thought there's an opportunity there. I didn't know whether it would be an opportunity for my daughter and 6 or 7 of her friends, or whether it would just kind of continue to build and grow. And it's very much been the latter.
Being a girl dad and the referee between sisterly fights and things is one thing, but coaching girls football is something else. What was that like in the early days?
Well, I had very little experience of coaching football. So I'd never coached boys before. So coaching girls was my introduction to coaching. And I guess, I mean, going back to the group that we had at the very early stages, there was very much a mix in ability. So you were starting pretty much with, at ground zero with some of the girls who had never put their foot to a ball before. So going through some of the basics. But I remember feeling very strongly from the very start that I wanted to be qualified to coach. And that's kind of one of the things that's kind of driven me all the way through, that I never wanted to feel that we were taking shortcuts because it was a girls' football club versus a boys' football club. So I kind of quickly, once we started, went through my kind of coaching badge and did the kind of FA's level 1, I think it was called at the time, because I was conscious that I was, I guess, privileged to have custody of this group of girls, and I thought they deserved to be coached the proper way, and not the way that maybe I was coached when I was young, because coaching had moved on since then. And that massively helped. Not so much in terms of the technical side of playing football, but more in terms of how you manage a crowd and how you make sure that they've always got a ball at their feet, and how you keep them engaged, and how you kind of split them into different groups. And I got so much out of it. So that really helped.
When you did those coaching qualifications in the beginning, how much of that was geared towards boys coaching in your experiences?
It was funny. It was fairly gender neutral, the course, but I remember the kind of FA tutors always kind of adding in all girls, and there was always that kind of apologetic addition in everything that they did. And also everyone else in the course, they were all in charge of boys football, all of the other people that were there on the coaching course. And when I introduced myself, I always felt, and I still do, there's always you get a little kind of, bless. There's a little bit of kind of a patronising kind of pat on the back and say, well done, doing it for the girls. And I'm like, we're a football club. We just happen to be a football club for girls. So, yeah, there's still a sense of that, I think.
I'd imagine you've probably had a lot of, Eamon's such a good dad, but you must at this point be coaching and have coached groups of girls that don't have your daughters in. So what's that been like as an experience? In the beginning, I'd imagine it was probably quite familiar when you knew that you were going to have those girls in your teams, whereas you graduate out of that and you're in charge of just a group of girls now.
Yes, it's true. It's funny. I kind of thought that maybe I would come to a kind of a natural end at the club when my daughter finished, and her last season was last year, and her group have all kind of disbanded now, and they've ended up at various universities around the country. And I was always kind of looking at that was probably a milestone, that she started at under 11 and gone all the way through to under 18, that was probably a good time for maybe me to hand over the reins to somebody else. But I look after the under 8s, so when the new kind of cohort of under 8s come in, I look after them, and then when they get to under 9, they all break into their individual teams and they have parents looking after them, and then I bring in the next wave of under 8s. So I get to know all of the girls in the club. And when I was just kind of looking one day at a training and there was 200 odd girls, I just thought I'm not ready to walk away from this. So still here.
Has coaching young girls helped you as a dad, or as being a dad to girls helped you as a coach?
I think so, and I hope so, because you get exposed to lots of kids. I guess it's a bit like being a teacher. You get exposed to lots of different kids. You learn lots of different triggers, and you learn that not every child reacts the same way to the same sort of stimulus and the same sort of messaging. So that's been helpful to kind of maybe understand behaviours in my own children and even within myself. So that has helped.
I spoke to one of the senior players this morning, one of the Swans, and she told me that you last year picked up an award from Middlesex FA around creation of culture, and she said actually that's the embodiment of the Signets and the Swans culture. But what does that mean to you?
I was delighted to be recognised, and I'm always delighted to hear feedback like that, because that is by far and away the most important thing about the club. And culture for me within the context of the club is all about inclusivity. It's all about being welcoming. It's all about treating all of the girls the same. It's all about respecting their motivations, understanding their different motivations, because we have, with so many players, the range of motivations just is vast. And trying to develop a culture that everyone feels that they're part of that, and we can meet whatever their triggers, whatever their motivations in football are. It's not easy, but that's, I think, it's one of the things that we do very well. And I think it's that attracts a lot of new players to our club, that where maybe they may have been disillusioned by more of a narrow culture at other clubs they had been in. And it's a tricky balance, because as much as we want to be inclusive and we want to be welcoming for everyone, we also want the girls to develop as players and as people. So, you know, the more inclusive you are, the more welcoming you are. There can be a danger sometimes that you're seen as a fun club, and therefore that might be fine for a certain number of our players, but maybe the players that want to kind of progress in the sport, they see that they've outgrown us and they need to move on. So trying to keep those two different motivations happy and welcoming, it's tricky, but we talk a lot about learning and loving the game, and both of those things are totally interdependent on each other. So we had a get together for all of our managers recently, and we talked about there might be lots of different reasons girls love football, and they may not necessarily be positive reasons. So that might be, we may have players, we don't, that mess around, and they see it as an opportunity to mess around, and they might love doing that. They're hanging around with their friends, but they're not learning. And we may have somebody else who's learning all the time, but they're not really enjoying it. So we talk a lot to our managers and our parents and our players about those two forces always having to be in play, because we want the girls to be, I guess, the best version of themselves from a footballing point of view.
One of the things that you said at the beginning of that was that there's a danger of being seen as a fun club. Why do you think fun and play seem to be bad words in sport? One of our early guests on Series 1, Eugene Minogue, said that we don't sport, we play sport. But it does seem that we're identified as not being serious if girls, boys, whoever are enjoying it.
Yeah, it's a great question, and fun is such a huge word, and it's such a broad word, and it can mean so many things to different people. We want everyone's football experience to be enjoyable. For me, I just sometimes when the word fun is mentioned, that kind of takes you into a place where it's all about partying and messing around. So we're quite careful with the language we use, and it's more about enjoyment rather than fun. But also, I think there's an element that, girls' football is not proper football, so therefore that should be fun. And boys' football is proper football, and therefore maybe there's less fun in there because it's more serious, because they all take it very serious and they want to improve. And I'm personally really keen that we don't treat the girls any differently to boys, that they have the same opportunities, that we invest in our premises, we invest in our equipment, we invest in our coaching product. So they're given the same opportunities as they would do if they're boys. So, we don't make any allowances for the fact that we have girls in our club. We are a football club first and foremost.
Do you think it's important to the girls that competition's acknowledged, even when they're young? Do you think it's something that, for the girls, this isn't a fun social club, this is a competitive environment for footballers?
Yeah, I think, but competition can be presented to the players in lots of different ways. From putting two passes together, even though the score might be 10-0 and not in your favour, that's success. So it's all about reframing what competition looks like, because everyone's in a different place, and you can find sometimes when people put a very narrow definition, which is all about winning the game, that's when players can get disappointed and disillusioned and maybe kind of fall out of love with the game. But if you kind of ignore the scoreline, on certain occasions when it's right, and every experience and every day is different, and you focus on something else, and the girls can still stay competitive, and they can focus on something, and they can feel like they've won at the end of a game.
The Signets as a club have been hugely successful, and like you say, it's not based in those metrics of medals and cups and trophies. It's measured in things like participation. The fact that you can walk around Twickenham on a Saturday morning and every girl under the age of 16 is wearing a purple or yellow jersey with a swan on its crest. What do you think has attracted so many young girls to not just playing football, but the ethos of this club and being involved in this environment, this culture?
I think there's a lot of it is friends driven. Parents obviously will always talk to parents, and they'll see what their child is getting from this. I think parents, we're all under pressure with our kids about exercise and living healthy lifestyles and reducing the amount of time that we're staring at screens. And there's a big kind of community feel to the club, and you've described it, and it's humbling walking around Twickenham on a Saturday and a Sunday and seeing all of the girls wearing the kit, and it just takes over the town, and it's hard not to want to be part of that. It really is, because it is quite a powerful movement.
If anyone is a repeat listener of the podcast and they've got a bingo card for the things that I come out with, they'll all be crossing off the next one, because I say all the time, from small acorns, mighty oaks grow. It's something that we look at in grassroots sport all the time. And I guess the Signets and the Swans are a true example of that, because the Signets came first and now you've got a senior women's football club. Did you ever expect that to happen in the early days?
No, I didn't. And I probably resisted the idea a little when the Signets were going through quite a steep growth spurt in terms of numbers. And some of the mums had said, we never had this opportunity when we were our daughter's age. Is there any chance you could maybe create something for us? So I was like, yes, maybe one day. And that started, I think, June or July of last year. And I guess I took a lot of the things that we did well with the Signets, and I wanted to replicate that culture as much as possible, about being totally inclusive. And it didn't matter if you were in your 50s and had never kicked a ball before. Now's your opportunity. I mean, the FA always refer to this age group as the forgotten generation, and you can see why. And it's been amazing, and it is like looking at the Signets, but adding 35 years on to the Signets, because you have players that used to play for university, and they would have been trailblazers 20, 25, 30 years ago. And we've got players that are kicking a ball for the first time, and the two groups just merge beautifully together. They all look after each other. There's a really nice kind of social feel about the club. There's no kind of judgment. There's no raised eyebrows if somebody lets a really easy goal in. It's just, some of them come and tell me it's the highlight of their week. It's Tuesday evening under the lights, or Thursday evening under the lights, and it's been great fun.
At the moment, they are the forgotten generation team. It's a lot of mums from the club, I know that. But as much as you thought perhaps your little exit stage left might have been this year when your girls weren't involved, if you look another 9 years into the future, do you think that you might end up with a senior setup that includes a first, second, third, so those girls who do graduate out of Signets become senior footballers on a social level and still have that competitive sport available to them?
I think so. And it was strange at the end of last season when our under-18s finished, and there's obviously a reason they were all moving on. We would have continued with them, but they were all moving on to university, so they kind of came to a natural end. But they'll all be back. They'll all come back in 2 or 3 years' time. We have something now for them, but I was always conscious that wouldn't it be great if they could come back into the club in some capacity once kind of university life is over and they move on to the next stage in their lives. So I think we have that now. So they can either continue playing with the Swans and maybe the formation of the Swans will evolve. So it becomes more league football and we have different teams in different leagues. But also from a coaching point of view, I'm really keen to get our older players back into the club as coaches, because I don't think they realised how much the younger players used to revere them and look up to them, and they were a bit like celebrities. Yeah. The under-18s, they were like you could see all the looks from the younger players. So to kind of go full circle for them to come back in would be just really nice.
Voice is one of the key tenets of Play Their Way. How much do you think this club has come to represent just that for young girls in the area? A safe space for them to enjoy sport and competition, but also to feel heard and seen?
I think very much so. I'd hope they all feel that way. We talk a lot within the club of developing the girls as players, but also as people. So, we try and we give them leadership roles on match days. And that starts at under-8s when they'll play a little tournament format where they might play 5 games on the morning. And they understand the different positions, but the girls are given the responsibility to choose who's playing in which position. So they're asked to move away from me and move away from the parents and come back in a couple of minutes and explain who's playing in what position, and they love that, and they just rise to it. And the more we let them use their own voices, the more surprised I always am on how that gets paid back in so much, back to you, because they're just a great bunch.
You're uniquely positioned because you can wear the coach hat and the dad hat. So from your experiences with your girls who are now university age, how much have you seen that influence them away from football, giving them the opportunity to be self-advocates on a football pitch? How much has that informed the young women that they've become today?
I hope it has helped a lot. I mean, so Ruby, my daughter's kind of at the stage, and she was writing her personal statement. She was making her application to university and is now, looking for summer jobs. And a lot of what I see her putting into her applications are the kind of roles that she had within the football club. And that's great to see that she's using that as, the time that she refereed or the time that she looked after the younger age group or the time she was captain or whatever it might be, that she's seeing those kind of transferable skills being appropriate for, employment.
Let's talk about some of the successes then of the Signets and the things that have probably or perhaps overwhelmed you as the person who started all of this. I know that there were huge contingents of the teams taken to a Lionesses game not so long ago and lots of purple shirts in the stadium. To be part of something like this, how proud does that make you?
Yeah, I mean, it will sound like the classic football cliche, but when you're living it week in, week out, I think it'll be one of those moments when I move away from it. I'll look back and think, wow, that was amazing. You don't really have a huge amount of time to kind of feel proud. It is, I mean, it's the example you gave about going to see the Lionesses, or we go to the FA Cup final and we watched, Man United beat Spurs. We had 400 of us at Wembley. And I remember the conversation with the Wembley ticket office, and the person I spoke to said, there's going to be Man United fans and Spurs fans, and then there's you guys. You will be the third biggest club at Wembley on that day. And I was trying to get some more tickets, but he just wasn't having it. He said, I can't give you any more. You've got 400. But we kind of did take over Wembley. Maybe one day we'll actually be watching the girls play on the hallowed turf.
So what is next for the Signets? What's the ultimate goal for the Signets? Is it to see a Signet become a Swan and then perhaps a Lioness one day?
Yeah, I think it would be amazing if we could continue to be able to offer football for girls that are at very different places in their footballing journey. And as I've mentioned before, we're getting 10, 12, 13-year-old girls into the club that are kicking a ball for the first time. We have another team that won their Premier League in the county, and that's all happening within the same club. So I kind of always want us to have a massively open door for women and girls of all ages to kind of learn their trade with us, but be able to kind of progress as far as they possibly can in the game. Possibly being a Lioness, that would be amazing.
In your opinion, how important is it that in grassroots age grade sport, success isn't measured in trophies? It's measured in participation, involvement and enjoyment.
Hugely important. It's hugely important because the minute you only, and that's not undermining the roles of trophies or more traditional markers of success, but when you only talk about that, then you're only appealing to a very small part of that audience. And when that's the language that always gets used, then that alienates the majority. So that's why we always make an effort to say that success, there are so many different definitions of success.
Eamonn, thanks for joining us today. What a great chat. And as always, up the Signets.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed. Be sure to leave us a review and share this with someone else who you think might enjoy it too. Check out our website, www.playtheirway.org, and follow Play Their Way on social media, at Play Their Way on TikTok, X and LinkedIn, and at Play Their Way UK on Facebook and Instagram.